Hello and welcome to World Talks on TVP World with me, Ashim Kumar. As 2025 comes to an end, the war in Ukraine remains unresolved, but politically transformed. The year saw intensified fighting, mounting casualties, and a dramatic reshaping of US diplomacy following Donald Trump's return to the White House. Washington's approach shifted from military backing towards deal-driven engagement, exposing fractures within the Western alliance and opening new space for Russian maneuvering. To assess what truly changed in 2025 and what lies ahead, we're joined by Stephen Moore, founder of the Ukraine Freedom Project. Stephen, welcome back. Good to see you.
Ashim, always great to be with you.
Thank you. So let's do an overview, if you would, Stephen, of what's changed over the past 12 months, diplomatically speaking, in terms of the role of the US in this war.
You know, frankly, not much has changed diplomatically. You've got, we're pretty much in the same place that we were at the beginning of the year, in that we've still got a war going on. We've still got talk of peace. We've still got not wanting peace. And, Putin, with these diplomatic talks, they are just an excuse for Putin to try to get what he wants militarily through diplomatic means. And anything that he does these peace talks is just going to advance his goal of taking over Ukraine and as much of Eastern Europe as he possibly can. So Putin doesn't want peace. Putin doesn't want to do deals with Steve Witkoff or Jared Kushner. Putin wants to rebuild the Soviet empire, and these peace deals are just a way to get there. And that's been the story on January 1st, 2025, and it will be the story tomorrow, January 1st, 2026.
Right. Okay. So let's dive into that a little bit more. President Trump has been quite clear that he's wanted this war to stop. He's put quite some pressure on President Zelensky, who's actually made many compromises, but Putin hasn't. Is it time for President Trump to turn the screws on Putin and get him to come meet Zelensky halfway?
Yes, it is. And to be fair, President Trump is dealing with the same problem that President Biden dealt with, which is you've got a nuclear power being aggressive, and Putin may not have the most stable personality. So how do you deal with that? Biden's answer was to drip weapons into Ukraine, slow walk weapons, and to disallow Ukraine using U.S. weapons in the way in which it was most likely to win. Now we're set. Trump's way of dealing with Putin is just, give him what he wants. And unfortunately, there is nothing you can give him that is not land in Eastern Europe.
Right. Now, how should Zelensky, in your opinion, respond to this? He seems to be caught between a rock and a hard place. Does he give up all of Donbass, and or does he keep saying, well, it's I can't do that. It's against the Constitution, and the people don't want it. What does he do next?
Yeah, we conducted a poll. Yeah. Well, and we conducted a poll. My organization, the Ukraine Freedom Project, conducted a poll of Ukrainians in December, and you might not be surprised to learn that giving up land in Donbass or Zaporizhia or Kherson or anywhere else is not popular. 3/4 of Ukrainians were strongly against giving up any land in Donbass. And so Zelensky is actually, it's even more complex for Zelensky than you had mentioned, because Zelensky is not the last word on these peace agreements. The last word is the Ukrainian people, and they have been fighting hard and sacrificing much for freedom, and they're not willing to give it up. And you've got, in addition to the Ukrainian people who have a say in this, you've got 900,000 battle-hardened, war-weary, but highly trained soldiers and highly combat-experienced soldiers who have a say in this. And so Zelensky has a lot to manage, but he has to go through these charades. The most important thing for Zelensky is to show that he is not the obstacle to peace. And I think he's doing a brilliant job of that. He invited President Trump to come over and fly Air Force One into Kyiv, which, that's a great idea. If there's a ceasefire, it would be safe for President Trump to do that. So I think Zelensky is doing what he needs to do.
Right. Now, talking about the opinion of the person on the ground in Ukraine, one of the points in the peace plan is turning the occupied area into an economic zone, a demilitarized zone. How does the Ukrainian population and military respond to that?
Well, Putin has, so Putin has broken 25 peace agreements with Ukraine over the last, between 2014 and 2021. So the level of trust of the Ukrainian people is very low. Something like 80% of them just believe that peace ain't going to happen. And that's a rational point of view with them. So any peace agreement that the Ukrainians just believe is going to be squandered shortly. So getting them excited about the details of any particular aspect of this is difficult. Again, the longest any ceasefire with Russia has lasted is 4 months. So, does Putin want an economic zone where everybody can make money? No. Putin wants to roll through that economic zone and take the rest of Ukraine and visit himself upon the Polish people. And, nobody in Ukraine wants that. Nobody in Poland wants that. And so, again, these peace agreements, you have to have a willing partner. And Putin is not a willing partner for peace. He's a willing partner to get what he wants diplomatically so that he can, rather than through the battlefield.
Understood. Now, let's fast forward just a little bit and imagine that there is some kind of peace deal. Security guarantees. Now, after the meeting between Trump and Zelensky, the last meeting, Zelensky came out, quite positively and said, we've got 100% agreement on security guarantees. What do you think that means?
Well, that is a good question. We polled that. The Ukraine Freedom Project polled that. And the most secure that the Ukrainian people would feel is if they had U.S. troops on the ground in Ukraine. And that would make them most secure. And then and I believe 58% said they would feel secure. 48% would say they would be feel secure with European troops, and 38% said that UN peacekeepers would make them feel secure. But Putin is not going to stop until someone makes him stop. And 100,000 U.S. soldiers inside Ukraine would be a great deterrent to Vladimir Putin.
Do you think Trump would agree to that?
That is a good question. I know that polling from the American people, and I've not looked at this recently, to be fair, but earlier this year, troops on the ground was not something that the American people were willing to do. And the unfortunate thing is that Americans view Ukraine through the lens of Afghanistan and Iraq. And they did not have good experiences of those wars. And so they look at this as another opportunity to pour tons of money into a war that will never end. And what they're missing is that we're in a war that isn't going to end easily anyway. Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea are all working together, and we have shooting wars in Europe and intermittently in the Middle East. And anything could go wrong in Taiwan or South Korea at any minute. And so at some point, the world, the Americans, the Europeans are going to have to figure out how to stand up to a nuclear-powered dictator that is aggressive with his neighbors.
Indeed. Now, in the last minute or so that we have left, Stephen, I want you to look into your crystal ball and tell me what the world is going to look like at the end of December 2026.
Oh, I think we're going to see more of the same and worse. What is it going to take to get Putin to stop harassing airports in Europe? I think you're going to see more of President Trump, policing the Western Hemisphere as he's doing in Venezuela. I think that China is just going to become more aggressive, and Iran is already just a few months after they got their teeth kicked in these with their nuclear program. They're already coming back and saying, "No, we want more. Let's go." The world is not going to be a more stable place in 2026, and that's just what we're in for.
Well, much yet to be done to get to that place, Stephen. Thank you, as always, for joining us and sharing your insights with our audience, and have a wonderful 2026.
Thank you, sir. Great to be with you.
And you. Take care. Bye now. And that brings us to the end of this episode of World Talks. But as always, don't go away. Lots more coming up. Bye.